Intermediate arcs keep you from feeling lost as you're running your TTRPG campaigns. Think of them as seasons of your campaign that keep the game feeling fun and fresh. Figuring out how to build these intermediate arcs made my campaigns 100 times better, so let me teach you how. So let's start this intermediate arc truly from scratch. I had my commenters throw out random narrative beats and selected 2 randomly. One is going to be the first beat of the intermediate arc and the other the last beat of the intermediate arc. And this is to show that no matter the idea, you can connect any 2 plot beats together with an intermediate arc. Let's start off with the general skeleton. I have it outlined here in this Google Doc, and it's reflective of this graph. Now, this is a graph from a book called Save the Cat, written by Blake Snyder. And this is a book about screenwriting and really storytelling. So this particular graph shows the general, what I like to call highs and lows of a story, the beats, where we're trying to get to along a particular narrative. And this graph isn't just used in screenwriting. You can basically plot 95% of stories you hear on this graph. Books, movies, TV shows, even really good D&D campaigns follow this graph. And why? Because it's just the natural flow of storytelling that we, the audience, are used to. And if you follow this general graph, your players are going to feel like they are in a story, like they feel the story progressing quote unquote naturally, because these are the beats that they're expecting, that all people are expecting, whether we know it or not. So if you take a look at this and then go back here, I have these 11 beats that I've set up that are generally reflective of the graph in Save the Cat, with a few minor differences. Now we're going to go through all of these beats throughout the video, but I want to give you the step-by-step method of actually setting up your own intermediate arc. Now the place where I like to start is actually the end, because if we know where the end is, where we're trying to head, or a particular destination, knowledge that we have in mind, it makes all of this so much easier. And that's not necessarily saying that we are going to end here, that we're going to end with this particular plot point, but it's just giving us something to shoot for so that we can build the rest of the campaign behind. So the particular beat that was chosen from you guys is: a kingdom is prospering, but there are dark secrets as people vanish if they speak out against the king, who has made a deal with a lich to stay in his magical laboratory to conduct his research, as long as the king provides souls for his phylactery. So this is a revelatory finale. Once we reach the end of this intermediate arc, this is what the player characters are going to find out in some climactic moment. That, we have an oppressive ruler who made a deal with a lich, and they are sacrificing people for a phylactery. Awesome. Now, where do we start out? Again, this was chosen randomly, but I think it fits well. So the opening image is that everyone starts the adventure dead. Alright, so we need to get from the people are dead, we are beginning an adventure with the PCs dying, or already dead. Probably already dead. I kind of want to, I think just with the DM in me, maybe them not knowing exactly how they died and having a certain memory gap would make things more interesting. But we know everyone starts dead. At the end, it's revealed that this kingdom has a dark secret with a lich empowering a phylactery. And we're doing this in a vacuum, by the way. Like, in an actual campaign, we will have player backstory, we'll have world information, we will have so much more to deal with. But I honestly thought for this video, that's clutter. We don't want to have all this excess information. We just want to go purely on the form. What does it look like in a vacuum to go from point A to point Z and connect everything up in between, right? So that's going to be the point of this video. So at the very start, we have our finale idea. This is the end. So if we go back to the graph, the finale is here, right? In a typical adventure and a typical intermediate arc, if it's not the end, we don't actually have this point right here, this kind of finale point. We try to end it on this high note. And then if you want to think about it, imagine that this point here is like a setup point for the next arc. So we're constantly upping the stakes. So this is the stakes upper. This is the big thing that is going to get the players interested in our next intermediate arc. And we put that at the end. This is our big, awesome idea. And then at the start, we have another big, awesome idea. Boom. We're starting strong. We're ideally ending strong. And as you notice, this end, we want to keep this more vague. I'm actually very glad that randomly this more vague information was chosen as that thing that's going to close out the intermediate arc, because if we try and plan things to be too structured, where it's like A, B, C, this all has to happen, and we're not giving ourselves the ability to have wiggle room to allow players to make choices and affect the overall campaign, it's going to feel railroady. It's going to feel railroady to the players. This will, I guarantee, not feel railroady to the players, and it's not railroading at all. It's just you having a plan. And you having a plan is very different from railroading. So we go end, then we go here in first, and then we go to midpoint. This is the order. End, first, midpoint. And the reason why we go midpoint is we want to begin to connect these two things together. So what could the midpoint of these two ideas be? And usually we want the midpoint to be a victory of some kind. Again, we're going to go back to this little graph. Why do we want the midpoint to be a victory? Because at some point, we're going to have a low point for the players, right? Having this low point, players always don't like to lose or to have the rug kind of pulled out from under them, but it's necessary for storytelling, because if it's just win, 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 even if the wins are quote-unquote fun, they start to lose a lot of impact. If it's all wins, no losses, then players begin to lose that overall satisfaction. But if they have a low point, if they have a setback, and the setback can come in multiple places. Look, that all is lost, that break into Act 2, both are kind of low points. So we're sprinkling low points in the story, but we also need high points in the story. Points where maybe the players are making progress. This is, I think, a progress high point towards the end of the season. It can be good, it can be bad, but this is just supposed to be progress and really a changing of the game as we're going into the next intermediate arc. The midpoint needs to be success, because if they don't have a success, it starts to just feel like, okay, we can do nothing right. We've gone for 2-3 months without a major success, because think about it. If we're going to be doing all this in ideally 8 to 12 sessions, like a season of television, that for most groups is going to be 3 to 5 months. And if you don't have that one major thing to get excited about, or a few major things to really enjoy, the overall satisfaction with your campaign is going to spiral way down. Now, as I've been talking, just generating an idea, maybe this major victory is going to be escaping the Lich's phylactery dimension. Maybe that's it. So we have this direct connection. And maybe that's what's happening in the initial part of the adventure, where they're stuck in the phylactery, so they have a real solid understanding of everything that's going on. Or maybe not. Maybe they only find out this is a phylactery after escaping it. That'd be cool. But now we have an intermediate point. They start off dead. The initial goal of this campaign, whether the players know it or not, escaping the Lich's phylactery. And then you can see from this escape, now we're connecting to this final dark secret. Now from here, I like to work backward, usually, because if I don't know what to do, working back from that finale to from that final big idea helps me build campaigns that are more gripping for players, because I'm not leaving this out on an island. I'm making sure that I'm preparing in such a way and laying plot lines in such a way that when they eventually learn this secret, it's going to hit. And even if they don't learn it in this intermediate arc, because these arcs change all the time, TTRPGs are about improv, player choice, and, so many times, this quote-unquote season finale shifts, and it's something else. But the shift is usually in still a good direction. And I say good direction as narratively impactful. Because again, I'm using this chart, where if I've done all of this, if I've said, all right, we've had our midpoint victory, we've had all is lost, then I know what needs to come next. I know there has to be a shift. There has to be a change. And whether that spirals off of player decision or an NPC doing something or whatever, it's going to still feel right. And just because I had a certain idea, this beat of learning that the king and the lich are one and the same, it's a whole corrupt system, it might be something completely different. Like, to be completely honest. But that's okay, because the structure stays the same. Because we have this structure underneath all of our work. And if we have that, then we are still going to get a high amount of player satisfaction. Our game is still going to change, and it's going to feel quote-unquote right to the players. Now, but I should probably also say, very quickly, you might be thinking, all right, like, this is going to become boring after a time, because the players are going to, understand this form, this graph, and at the end of everything, I shouldn't follow this because I want to be unique. I want to have a story that's going to, twist on the players, and that's going to make it feel very different so that they don't know what to expect next. And I would say two things. Firstly, think about going to the theaters, to the movies, right? This is pretty much every movie. This is literally every Marvel movie ever constructed. Like, we can plot out beat by beat by beat by beat every Marvel movie here. Marvel, I mean, in its heyday, $1 billion a movie. Not to that same heyday now, but this particular structure. This does not get old. This is everything. This is how you feel in a movie. Oh, things are going too well. Something's going to happen. And we can actually use that impending dread for something else. And usually, even if the players are up here, they have no idea what the all is lost moment's going to be. That's the twist. Like, they know something's coming, but how you execute the idea, that's the difference. But I'll be honest, I switch this up every now and then. But here's also the thing. I've run more than 40 TTRPG campaigns, just D&D alone, more than 20 to level 20. I've done this. This has been a tried and true system that I have gone through and I know like the back of my hand. If you've never completed more than 2, 3 full-length TTRPGs, I wouldn't suggest it, at least breaking the mold, because you don't know really what the mold is, if you know what I'm saying. Master the foundations, master the basics. And I'm not just saying, hey, I understand what you, guy on the internet, is saying. I've already mastered it. I mean, do it. Because you haven't mastered it unless you've done it. And if you've done it, then, yeah, go for it. And if you've done it a few times, it's not just, I completed 1 out of 4 campaigns, so I know it. Get a few under your belt. Get a few under your belt to the point where you feel confident in the beats of an overall campaign. But moving back to the process, we did last, right? We did our big thing, this thing that's going to change our campaign. We did the first because we have to know where to start. We hit the midpoint. Now we are going to step back and start moving back in this way. What is Dark Night of the Soul? Well, the way I'm defining it, this Dark Night of the Soul is when your players have to dig deep. They are digging deep to do something after this all is lost moment. So this whole structure here is the oh shit moment of the campaign. So their major victory, they escape the Lich's phylactery dimension. What do they do from here? The bad guys close in, so they're probably on the run from the Lich and are trying to seek safety, let's say. Right? That seems very simple. You know, they break out of the phylactery, maybe they get their bodies back. They're in this laboratory. Maybe it's like kind of like a dungeon underneath like a castle or something. They escape the dungeon. That's probably what it is. They are going to escape the dungeon, and Dark Knight escape the dungeon, and perhaps it is because we want to maintain the reveal that the king has made a deal with the Lich. And we'll say, and realize that an advisor to the king is working with the Lich. And they are now wanted criminals in the kingdom. We can just do something very basic like that. And again, this is a vacuum. This is not good, but we're just showing, you know, how this goes. So they're wanted criminals in the kingdom, and maybe then Dark Night of the Soul. The party learns they have to reveal the treachery of the Lich and advisor to the people. They go on a quest to do this, or we'll just say a mission to do this. And you know, what is this Dark Night of the Soul like? This is still incredibly vague, because yes, they could go and do something else, but the Lich and the advisor are likely going to be after them after they somehow escape the phylactery. Souls can escape this phylactery, so they have to get them back. And they could ruin the entire plan. Bad guys closing in. This is them on the run. They escape the dungeon beneath the capital city, because we already have here, the Lich has his magical laboratory. It's probably beneath the capital city of the king, so they keep in close contact. And perhaps they are able to, again, find, you know, some officials to say, hey, there's a Lich. They get met by the advisor, and actually, you know, this advisor's working with the Lich, so they're now wanted criminals. And they go, oh my god, it goes deeper than we thought. So they need to go directly to the government. Dark Night of the Soul, you know, they gotta dig deep. They're in hostile territory, and if they don't get the law off their back, then things are gonna go wrong. And even if they don't initially, you know, do this, we can still switch it up. This Dark Night of the Soul is vague, and here, I'm just going to highlight it for a quick second so that you guys understand what happens here in the Dark Night of the Soul. Very player dependent. We're putting something here so that way we can give a plot hook to the players if they want to take it. However, this changes. This changes so easily, and it's very much player decision. And then, once we go to this season finale, okay, well, any number of things can happen, but it's likely going to be a reward that I want to give them, or a certain revelation that I want to sneak in to the season finale. Kind of no matter what's going on as a reward. I won't say no matter what's going on, but something that I've already prepped and prepared that can be slotted in, that's going to help the players they're going to like, so that if they're getting away, and if they're doing things that relate to this overall narrative and story, they get to learn this information. And that's going to shape everything going forward. Okay, but as you can see, we now have worked our way and we filled in this section here. Very easy, very simple. Now, we work from midpoint back. Promise of the premise. So, what is the promise of the premise? This is basically, why are you playing this adventure? Why are you in this campaign? If you gave a pitch to the players and you said, this is going to be a dungeon crawler, this is going to be filled with dungeon crawling in, or did you tell your players, I love roleplay, we're going to be doing a lot of roleplay, then that's what this promise of the premise is. It's getting to the meat of the campaign and giving the players what they asked for. If they have backstories, we're dealing with backstories here. If they are just run and gun, we're running and gunning. Let's just say, for the sake of argument, part of this pitch was escaping the afterlife, right? So, promise of the premise here is collecting the narrative coupons necessary to escape the dimension, which is the Lich phylactery, right? Basically, this is a session or 2 or 3 or however long it takes for the players to do the things. We're not going to make it a lot of things, right? We still want to keep this moving. And we could make this an entire intermediate arc in and of itself. That would be the easiest thing to do. I just put this on hard mode because now we're having to do more. And I would actually advise doing more. So many times when I collaborate with game masters over on my Patreon, I offer GM coaching across many systems. And one of the biggest things that we work on is actually speeding up these intermediate arcs. Because it's very easy to turn what is essentially like 10 sessions here into 30 or 40 or a year. And if you spend a year getting out of, the phylactery dimension, you can't guarantee that anything beyond this is going to happen. Because most D&D campaigns end in 6 to 10 sessions. It's going to fall apart. Unless you give people a reason to keep coming back. So I always make the recommendation, use your cool shit early and often. And believe in yourself to fill in the back end. To not hold back. So this is part of not holding back. We're speedrunning, essentially, getting the narrative coupons. Or I don't want to say that, but this is supposed to be high octane, high action. If you go back and we look at the chart, the players are on the upswing here. Upswing. This is them getting things done. This is them progressing the story quickly in their favor, right? We're making progress. And so if we're making progress towards this midpoint, it's going to be good. No, nothing lost there. Putting too many plot coupons there, that's usually the problem. Because if you say, all right, you need to get these 10 things, dude, that can be 6 months. That's 6 months of collecting little MacGuffins. We don't want to do that. 2 to 3 over the course of, a few sessions, that could work. I would almost say, you have 2 major things that you're trying to get. One is completed in the promise of the premise. The other, maybe it's defeating an end boss so that they can actually get out of the Lich's phylactery, like a small little piece of the Lich's soul that he leaves in there to guard the gates. So, okay, we have promise of the premise done. That's understood. We're getting things done. Then we're going to do the break into Act 2, which I have renamed the hero transition. Save the Cat is about screenwriting. And TTRPG stories are not scripts. They're not books. They're not anything like that. So we have to think about it differently. That's why this has to be Major Victory. Or I don't want to say has to, but usually. So that the players feel good, because they're usually heroic. Now, if this was a Call of Cthulhu campaign, this is going to be major revelation or a break in the mystery, right? This is really just success. I'm going to say major success is probably a better way to put it. So we have our major success. Then we go to our hero transition. And this is when the players ideally stop being passive and start being active. This is when they're making lots of decisions. Now, they're making decisions up through here, but this is when they get enough information to make major decisions. Because so many times in sandboxes, we want the players to go ahead and make all the decisions up front, but they don't know their characters, they don't know the world. Everything is strange, right? So trying to thrust all that decision making on them here at the opening oftentimes leads to lackluster decisions or analysis paralysis or whatnot. Here, though, once we've given them time to understand more of what's going on, now we get better decisions. Now we get players who are more happy with their decisions. What is the hero transition here? This is likely going to be the players learning they are, or I would say their souls are trapped in a phylactery. Spaces, Colin, spaces. See? Now from here, once they learn this, they decide what they will do next. And we'll put escape here. I mean, they could decide to live in the phylactery forever, but they can also escape. Awesome. Now we have this moment where, oh my god, we are dead. And we're not only just dead, this isn't the afterlife. We're trapped here. Our souls are trapped. Not good. So, then we have something else. We go back, and this is kind of debate. This is, I would almost say debate in most TTRPGs is going to be an unclear world. Kind of, if we want to say. This is the players going from, something vaguely understandable, they are dead, to we don't actually know what's going on. We're trying to learn that we're in a phylactery. So I'm going to leave this temporarily because I think this is going to be the most confusing. We're going to head to Setup and Catalyst. So Setup and Catalyst are basically our start to the campaign, right? And what is going to be this start? Well, we want to make it big. We want to make it epic. We're setting things up. So perhaps these souls are start in some type of prison. So the setup is the souls of the players, appear in a prison within the phylactery. And this whole setup is they escape this soul prison dungeon, or whatever it is. It might be something even crazier. There might be a boss here they might have to solve, a puzzle. It might be an illusion. It could be like The Good Place, right? Where actually the Lich is setting it up so that everything is quote-unquote great, but they're still draining the souls as they go. And it can be a mix. This is just whatever you want the setup to be. And I usually like to say this setup ends after a session or two with Catalyst. This is the big thing. This is supposed to catch the attention of your players, to make them go, wow, this is a campaign that I want to keep playing. So this might be something like an epic final boss they have to defeat, in order to access the rest of the phylactery dimension. We'll just call it PD, the phylactery dimension. And this boss fight, we are pulling out all the stops. If you have a great mechanic for a boss fight, like, perhaps this boss can use all the features of the player character's stat blocks. And then we might go even further and say, plus the features they have at the next level. So this is kind of hinting at, it's draining their souls. They're less powerful than they were. Things have happened, etc., etc., etc. This is supposed to be the thing players talk about. So this might be just a session of epic boss fight. As cool as you can make the players and their characters, this is what gets them going. And at the end of it, the party escapes into the rest of the phylactery dimension. But they had to do this to break into this next world. This is the catalyst for everything. And the catalyst is probably going to look different in many other ways. Like, we should probably be setting up theme in this catalyst. If we have a theme of this campaign centered around death, then the boss might be talking a lot about death and might have lots of death symbol, like imagery, and the concept that if the players die here, their souls are eaten and gone forever. So we're going to usually set up themes here. We can't really do that in this particular just white room crafting of this intermediate arc, but this is where we would set that up. We'd also maybe get player backstory involved here. Like, what if the final boss, or it's not the final boss, but we'll just say this epic boss, what if they discuss the wizard player's NPC friend and say, you won't escape like they did? What? This NPC that I remember from my backstory from when I was alive, they're here? Wait, what happened? Did they escape too? Where did they go? Like, we're starting to lay foundations. This is not only setting up for what's happening in the rest of the intermediate arc, with the use of souls, maybe some backhanded trickery and oppression like what this king has here, but also we're setting up player backstory and theme. We're trying to do a lot at this Catalyst event, so the reason I highlight it in red is we put a lot of time and effort in here. Now we go from Catalyst to Unclear World. The Unclear World is also important. Its importance is getting us from escaping this boss, going from our setup to the hero transition. Now, what this Unclear World is kind of up to us. Maybe it's a mini hex crawl, right? Where we're trying to go through, meet NPCs, people who have escaped the soul dungeon and are being hunted. Or, maybe it is, kind of stealth missions going through the world. Or it can just be a time of exploration. Whatever the case is, we are usually pointing the players at something. So maybe the Unclear World is also about meeting X NPC that we talked about before, or just doing something of the sort to make the transition. This is a very open spot. I usually like to say, use your best ideas here. This is best idea territory. And we're not going to put a lot of time and effort explaining what this middle piece is. That's just for you and your players. This is really where you go session to session. And yeah, of course, we're pointing towards the hero transition. We're pointing towards this big moment where we actually break into quote-unquote Act 2. So this is probably session 4 to session 5 in here. Maybe 3 to 5 or 3 to 6 if you're very slow. I wouldn't say very slow. If you're average. I tend to run my campaigns at a faster clip just because I found that the tighter pacing really makes it so that the campaigns pop more. And when you have tighter pacing, your players are more invested in the campaign. Things are always happening. I want to make sure that every time the players sit down to play, they go, oop, we've just done another thing. The story's progressing forward. Every time we sit down, it's not just, meh, where we're doing things, we're pushing forward. And that's how I kind of come to this. But not everyone wants that. Some groups are much more chill, low key. And that's where you can do that here. But whatever you do, best ideas. Make these sessions as fun as possible. Right? You just went from the catalyst, ride this high. Ride the high. And this is also kind of Promise of the Premise too. If you want to say this is like the prologue to Promise of the Premise. Because we're being fun. We're doing what we kind of wanted to do. And even if you're not fully cashing in on the premise, you're just doing as much fun, cool TTRPG activities with your players as possible. So that's what this unclear world is. We are moving through this mysterious new world that we're in, or the new situation that has occurred after the catalyst. We are parsing through what has happened here. And this is giving time for us to parse before we go into the hero transition. Like, if you really want to know, this exploration, this is a time for knowledge gathering, right? Where the players are gathering knowledge here. They're trying to understand what's all going on. So that's the time. Give them a session or two just to get this knowledge done. So that when they make it to the hero transition, boom, they can make this cool choice. We go into Promise of the Premise, and it feels like we are moving along at a solid clip. We're being heroes, we're being investigators, we're being whatever your system is. So, when we look back at this, what I see is 8 to 12 sessions. Now, this might seem very quick to some of you. Very, very quick. But even then, we have to look at not only time in terms of in-game, but time for players as well. Because spending 3 to 5 months out of game doing something is a lot. It's a lot. People's lives change all the time. Situations change. Like, that's an entire season of a year. So understanding this fact helps to make it so all of this information, all of this change that is happening aligns with real world time. If you're just sitting around and you have a campaign that's moving very, very slowly, you go, okay, it's been 12 months. How far are we in the campaign? Well, we're about to make it to the hero transition. Or, we're just getting to Promise the Premise. Like, for most pieces of media, if a video game took 100 hours to get good, would you play that game? If the video game took 20 hours to get good, would you play it? If it still wasn't reaching this promise. If the video game said 1 hour in that you were dead, but the goal was not to be, and it was 50 hours, it was 100 hours, and you knew that being not dead wasn't like the final season finale. Like, that was just actually your first objective. You'd be getting kind of pissed. So this is designed to move quickly. It's designed to not just move quickly, but to move naturally. A natural pacing to your games. And so when we look back, let's say if we're moving generally slower, this is 12 sessions when we break into Act 3. And if you are 6 sessions in and you're still in debate, you can still get here. But now you just know we have to move at a nice clip. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Right? It just lets you know where you kind of have to be. And it's not that we're going to railroad players here, but maybe if you're promised the premise, if this part of the story here has 5 narrative coupons, you take that down to 1 or 2. Just so that you're maintaining the right amount of pacing to keep this fun for players. All right, though, let's run through this all at once, right? So we have our opening image, randomly generated by you guys. Everyone in the adventure starts dead. You're meeting each other. What's the setup then, after you all start dead? Well, you're meeting in what appears to be like a prison. You don't know it's a phylactery yet. And the setup is, session 1, maybe session 2, trying to escape this soul prison dungeon. You're maybe meeting NPCs. You're getting some knowledge about what's going on here. You're testing out the waters of your characters. And then end of session 2, maybe even session 1, we're in the Catalyst. Epic boss fight. We're setting everything up. It's going to be awesome. I usually like to say this is session 1, and then session 1 ends right before the Catalyst. That way, once we do the Catalyst at the end of 2, players go, okay, we're in it. We met our characters. Now we're doing things. It feels right. It feels good. After the Catalyst, the world has changed. Now we're going out into the rest of the phylactery dimension. The world is unclear, but we're gathering knowledge. We're meeting NPCs. If you have cool encounters that you're thinking about, or interesting locations, this is where we're putting them in this 4th beat. However, at some point here, this is probably session 4 or 5, after we're in this unclear world, and we're just having fun. We're having as much fun as possible. Then, maybe one of the NPCs, where the players learn through the world, their souls are trapped in the Lich's phylactery. They learn what a phylactery is. Maybe they get some memories back. And they decide what they have to do. Usually this decision comes with the knowledge of, hey, if you want to get out, you have to do these things. You have to collect the narrative plot coupons. Maybe there are places of weakness, or there are gates that need to be turned on within this phylactery dimension. And that's a way of getting out. It's like reverse engineering the Lich, putting souls in, or maybe drawing souls out to use their power. So, now we're in Promise of the Premise. This is session, I'll say 6 to 8. Yep, 6 to 8 probably sounds about good. And this is just making sure that we're fulfilling the overall wants and desires of the players. After that, major success. This is like session, usually 8 if you're doing 12 sessions, right? If you're doing 10, then this is like session 6, right? Like we're moving quickly here. Like things are changing. And especially if you're running for like 4 to 6 hour sessions, that's a lot of time for people. So you should be able to get through these beats more quickly. If you're running 2 and 3 hour sessions, like some of you are doing, then yeah, you can take a little bit more time, especially if it's weekly. Weekly sessions, you have a little bit more leeway. I still like to say try and cap it at like 12 sessions for intermediate arcs if you can, because then things start to get stale, even for the best game masters out there. But yeah, kind of in the middle, or just after the midpoint, we have a major success. This is escaping the Lich's phylactery, and for some sessions, we even kind of rope it into the bad guys close in. So like if this is session 8, then maybe as well a part of session 8, right at the very end, they're on the run from the Lich. Like they beat the boss, they get out. Oh no, we're in this strange place, and the minions of the Lich are out here too? What? But now we're moving into All is Lost, right? So this is 9 to 10. This is the party beginning to understand that they're in a dungeon beneath the capital city. They're starting to realize that the world even out here is against them. Like they thought that they were free after escaping. No, the Lich is still powerful even out here. And then we move into Dark Night of the Soul, like session 10, 11, probably somewhere in between. That's when they realize the Lich and the Advisor are together. They are on the run. They're wanted criminals. Now they're fighting against this. This is when they're taking time to, once again, be heroes. This is like a mini hero transition, sped up. They go, things are bad, but now we have to do this thing. It's not a time to give up. And then we head to the season finale. This is when they're doing everything that they can. They're getting a victory or defeat here, one or the other. It depends on their decisions, but the game changes. It's not just the Lich, it's not just the advisor, it's the king who's behind this. The king. This kingdom seems to be prospering, but the king is throwing people inside the phylactery. Were they thrown the phylactery? Is that what happened? Maybe they learn more about their past. It's no longer a campaign about just fighting a Lich. It's about fighting a kingdom and an evil king. You see? That's kind of how this works. And you don't need to do an intermediate arc. You don't need to do this at all. But for me, I kind of look at it as, why not? This takes me 30 minutes every 3 to 5 months for an intermediate arc. If I can spend 30 minutes to cut down on my stress and prep time for the next 3 to 5 months, yeah, I'll do that. And sure, I might need to tweak these things as time goes on. Maybe, with just how things are going, this, like escaping the phylactery dimension, it goes to the final. It goes to the season finale. Just because we're moving slower. But it fits. It makes sense because I am not an oracle. I don't know what's going to happen in the future with my players. But this is helpful. At least for me, it is. And it makes it so your narratives are more cohesive. That everything feels more together in a way. And if you want to learn more about plot arcs, check out this video right here. And if you want some help building these arcs on your own, I do offer Game Master coaching over on my Patreon. But thank you guys for sitting and watching, and thank you for entering the dungeon.